This is the Illinois Nutrient Loss Reduction Podcast, Episode 39. Are these tools in your toolbox? Prairie strips. I'm Illinois Extension's Todd Gleason. Today, we'll discuss prairie strips and how they're used in an agricultural setting. Paula Hinkson is the Assistant State Conservationist for Easement at the Natural Resources Conservation Service, NRCS, and she's the CRP Program Manager. I asked her to tell us about prairie strips.
Yes, a prairie strip is a conservation practice that protects the soil and water quality, and they provide habitat for wildlife. They're composed of native perennial vegetation. They're placed in the field on the contour through the field to reduce the erosion through a field, or they're placed around a field border for also erosion control and habitat diversity for a normal row crop field.
Do they fall under CRP or the Conservation Reserve Program?
Yes, prairie strips are a practice that are offered as cost share under the CRP program. The program allows them to be at least 30 foot wide with a maximum of 120 feet. And the locations where the practice qualifies are around the perimeter of the field or part of the perimeter of a field. They can go through the field on the contour, as I mentioned earlier. They can be parallel or perpendicular to a grass waterway, wherever they may need to be around that waterway to help with filtering of the soil and improve the water quality. They can also be on the gradient of a terrace channel. They can be in front of a water and sediment control basin, any place where they can be filtering out soil and nutrients in order to help clean up the water and provide good water quality. They're also available for pivot corners in places where people are using irrigation, where it might be needed to reduce the soil erosion and improve water quality in those locations.
Are prairie strips more beneficial for improving soil health? And maybe you can define that. And can you compare it to maybe a single grass species?
Yeah, I would say prairie strips are more beneficial than a single grass species. They provide the plant diversity for wildlife and beneficial insects more so than what a single grass species will provide. And they also provide more diversity below ground for soil health with respect to different root systems and the microbial communities that are associated with those root systems that a single grass species wouldn't provide.
Can you talk about some of the other benefits of using a prairie strip, maybe related to soil health or water quality?
Sure. The prairie strips they're also going to provide that soil erosion reduction and improve the water quality, which also improves the soil health. If you're going to be able to keep your soil in place, you're going to have better soil health. The grasses and forbs provide that active plant growth, which improves the soil health. And when placed on the contour, the prairie strips are reducing the erosion and the nutrient transport. And then when planting the seed mixes, we're looking to plant 2 flowering species throughout the growing season. So early in the spring, in the summer, and then a little bit later in the fall. So we'll have a minimum of at least 10 flowering plants out there throughout the year. And then that's providing that diversity for the beneficial insects because you have that flowering going on all through the growing season.
Can you tell me a little bit about maybe the cost share opportunities that are available through the Natural Resources Conservation Service, the U.S. government, NRCS?
Yeah, so this particular practice is pretty new, the prairie strips. It actually was been piloted by the Iowa State University prior to being an opportunity through the Conservation Reserve Program. So currently, it's only available for cost share through the Conservation Reserve Program, which is managed by the Farm Service Agency, and then the NRCS, us, our side, we provide the technical assistance for seeding those and placing those on the landscape. So through the Farm Service Agency and the Conservation Reserve Program, the landowners can get those practices established with assistance for the cost of establishing the practice, and then they get a rental payment for those acres where the practice is established for up to 10 years. And then we, as the Natural Resource Conservation Service, give them the seeding recommendations, help them put them on the landscape or locate them on the landscape. And then throughout the course of that 10 years, we're working with them to make sure that the practice is establishing well and being managed properly.
What does that entail?
So that, for the most part, that entails keeping the invasive species out, some of the noxious weeds, keeping those out. And then as you get through the life cycle of these stands, you may need to do some light strip disking, maybe burning, something to keep the weeds and shrubs out of the seeding that you don't want. And also that helps the seed expand and be more vigorous, so it can continue to be very useful throughout the 10 years. Otherwise, you'll get some of the plants dying out and the stand is not as good. So midway through that 10-year time frame, you need to do a little something to keep the plants vigorously growing and expanding and providing that good habitat and soil health that they're designed to do.
Where might you purchase seed for a prairie strip?
So most of the local seed vendors will be able to get the seed that they need. We provide the landowners with a seeding recommendation, which lists all the different species of seeds that they need, along with the pounds of seed that they need to purchase. So they can usually take that to their local FS, Equity, other seed suppliers that I know are around in local locations, and they'll be able to get the seeds for them. They may need to order some of them, but they'll be able to get them.
Pheasants Forever, I take it as another opportunity to purchase seed from?
Yeah, you bet. Pheasants Forever is a good source. Sometimes the Soil and Water Conservation Districts in the county offices will have a listing of those people that offer that they can purchase the seed from. So that's another good place to go to get information about where to purchase the seed.
Finally, any advice for producers and landowners?
Well, I think the prairie strips are, like I said, they're a new practice, but they're very beneficial to the landscape, especially when you have a field that has a little bit of a slope to it. Maybe you haven't thought about planting on the contour before, but if you do plant on the contour, these prairie strips can help just break up that crop rotation, provide some diversity for the wildlife and the beneficial insects, and slow that soil erosion down that might be taking place, improving the water quality. They're also really good for border practices. Sometimes landowners are fighting trees encroaching on their fields, getting into their equipment. These prairie strips can be a buffer around the edge of your field where you don't have to fight some of that as much, as well as then again, you're providing that habitat that you wouldn't have had in the past with just a row crop field right up against the timber. So they have a lot of benefits, and especially in these times when we think about fewer weeds in the fields, these provide those beneficial plants, forbs, and native species of grass that the beneficial insects need and the pollinators need. So I think it really provides a good environmental benefit in addition to the soil health benefits that the practices provide.
So a prairie strip, as NRCS's Paula Hinkson just told us, is simply native species of prairie that are placed in a strip where farmers and landowners, and in this case the NRCS, believe they can do the best job of controlling erosion or some other field issue. Now, Dallas Glazig is with Pheasants Forever. That's one of the organizations where farmers and others can purchase seed for a prairie strip. I asked him to tell me why it is that his agency supports the use of prairie strips in an agricultural setting.
Yeah, so I've actually been fortunate enough to install some prairie strips right here in East Central Illinois, and both with other farmers and as well on my own farms. And I've noticed a lot of benefits when it comes to the prairie strips. One farmer out of Gibson City, Illinois, within the first year of establishment, had a large rain event. He got 6 inches with one event, and there was a conventional farmed neighbor, and that first strip slowed the water down enough and sedimented out about 8 inches of soil that ran from the neighbor and now became part of his property. So all that nutrients that came with it are now his to farm, and he was having a gully form through there as well, just as the natural water was flowing through that draw. And we're now on year 3 of these strips, and that gully is essentially removed now. Um, they're just great when it comes to erosion control. And then his other big purpose was bringing in beneficial insects. So he's actually working with the University of Illinois and some entomology studies to figure out how many beneficial insects are on his property, and what these prairie strips are bringing in. I know Dr. Jonathan Lundgren out in South Dakota found that 97% of insects found in a standard ag system are beneficial or non-harming, and only 3% are pests. So by bringing in those beneficial predatory insects within the first year, and now up to year 3, he has actually removed all of his insecticide from his operation, and is saving him greatly on finances.
What does managing a prairie strip entail?
Yeah, so these prairie strips are actually fairly easy to manage. With CRP and other government programs, you get to choose your management from the options that they have, such as there's prescribed fire, which is extremely effective at controlling woody vegetation and other invasives, and as well as stimulating the native forbs that are there. There is interseeding. Interseeding is really good when it comes to an invasive species coming in and choking out a lot of your forbs by destroying that invasive species. And interseeding, you can revitalize that strip in that area. There is light disking, and that's disking real lightly, 1/3 of the strips at a time. You're only talking about 1/2 inch of depth of that disc, and what that does is you're breaking up that sod layer, bringing in some of that soil to the surface, so the sunlight can regerminate the seed bank that's full of your forbs, and then you can see some stimulation that way. And then as well, there's chemical control, and chemical control is really effective for controlling cool season grasses and woody species. Those invasives that really come in and choke out the area and make it less desirable for pollinating insects, and as well for the forbs to flourish in. So those are the top managements for CRP programs, and a farmer can actually pick whichever one they're wanting. Then as well, they are adjustable, come your mid-contract management. So depending on how the site is, those can be adjusted. Whenever it comes to strips that are done outside of CRP, which the particular farmer in Gibson City, that's what he did. He's actually using prescribed grazing and rotational grazing for a lot of his management control. So he's going to be having grazing and pasture pork coming through, and be consuming a lot of and uprooting your large weed species, such as giant ragweed and dandelions that are going to have that larger taproot that the hogs prefer, and then as well as eating on the grasses and lessening the impact of those invasives and woody species that way. So whenever you utilize these practices on your own, you get a lot more range of options to choose from. The ones that I would avoid using, especially depending on time of year, are haying and mowing. Usually whenever the biomass is set for haying within that strip is actually as well whenever your best species are in full bloom and you're within nesting season of birds. and some critical points for the insects. So by bringing in haying and mowing and destroying the vegetation within that site, you can detrimental hit your prairie strip. So I would avoid those options, but those other managements are easy to utilize, easy to work with, and really applicable for prairie strips.
How does the wildlife change within the prairie strip?
Yeah, the wildlife does change within the prairie strip. Within first year of seeding a prairie strip, you will see a increase in wildlife. Notably, you'll see more bird species coming in, which that's actually a good thing. By bringing in a healthy bird population, farmers can see about a 33% reduction in pest insects. And now, if you recall, that's only 3% of the insects there. And so by bringing in these beneficial birds, they're not really particular about which insects they're consuming, and they will consume everything and still reduce the pest by 33%. I mean, one barn swallow will consume 850 insects per day. So it is amazing whenever you bring in the native bird populations, and they love these strips. You'll see things like eastern meadowlark start moving in, some dixis will move in. Of course, red-winged blackbirds will utilize these prairie strips, and then you will see a big growth of insects and other arthropods come into the sites. So, been seeing on the prairie strips installed a lot more rise of your predatory beetles, hoverflies, which as well are predatory for larvae on aphids. They're annoying during this time of year, end of July, early August, because they fly around you. A lot of people call them sweat bees because they're sitting there licking the sweat off you, but their larvae are actually beneficial. And so you'll see a large increase in that. And by having these strips within 200 feet, you actually allow those predatory insects, such as those beetles, to be able to move back and forth between them and reduce both insect pest and weed pressure within your field.
Can you tell me about the plant species that make up the prairie strips that Pheasants Forever puts together as a seed mix?
Yeah. So I actually did help create those mixes, and the mixes that Pheasants Forever has available on our website geared towards prairie strips is fit and designed for the CRP standard. However, if installed on your own, that mix can vary. But the big key that you're looking for is diversity of wildflowers. By bringing in a lot of species of different blooming wildflowers, you want to hit your 3 bloom periods. So you want to hit in early summer, late spring, some flowers blooming. You want to hit midsummer, flowers blooming. Then you want to hit end of summer, start of fall, of flowers blooming. And that is where you're going to get the most impact from bringing in the wildlife species that can beneficially affect your field. And then as well, by having some grass components and these deep-rooted forbs, that's as well where you get a lot of your water infiltration and soil erosion control without having to adjust the level like a terrace would through a field. By having those deep-rooted plants, you can get similar effect of erosion and water control without having to do the expensive engineering and land management.
Any advice for farmers and landowners that are thinking about adding a prairie strip to a piece of land?
Yeah, big advice: if you're going to be adding prairie strips, start thinking about a minimum 10% of that field size within strips. And there's been a lot of studies from U of I, Iowa State University, that shows that 10% is kind of that critical point when it comes to nutrient reduction and as well as wildlife benefit. Of course, going more than that, you're going to see a greater benefit of the strips. CRP caps at 25% of the field size. So if you're within that 10 to 25% of the field, you will see a good benefit of the prairie strips. And then Some other advice I would have is, reaching out to myself and other fellow biologists that are familiar with the species, because these are within an ag system. So I get asked a lot about weed pressure and stuff like that. And by having the most diverse mix plopped in there, you're filling a lot of the niches, which then will slow the growth of weeds within the strip and into the ag field. And then thinking about where they're going to go. The strips that I've installed are planned out with a farmer's GPS system so that they follow the same lines as the equipment, as the tractor. So you're not having to create a half round or a point row or something like that. So really think about the layout of those strips. That's going to make it easy to manage your crop field and the strips themselves. And with modern technology such as GPS and whatnot, it just makes it really, really simple and easy. So those are definitely the things that I would start thinking about as a farmer getting into prairie strips, is where you want to go and then diversity.
That was Dallas Glazik from Pheasants Forever. He and Paula Hingson from Illinois NRCS joined us for this episode 39 of the Illinois Nutrient Loss Reduction Podcast. Are these tools in your toolbox? Prairie Strips. The program was produced in conjunction with the Illinois Extension Watershed Outreach Associates Jennifer Jones and Rachel Curry. I'm Illinois Extension's Todd Gleason.